I thought you were going to talk about something like super top secret. So I'm like, wait, let me stop it. We don't want the world knowing our top secret plans.
About that bank robbery. Oh, crap.
Oh, yeah, no, wait, we didn't rob anything yet.
They robbed me.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yes, they do. When I was doing the episode on Nancy, I was freaking out in my folder because I only had one file. And I knew I did this one. And I number all the files. They tell you don't need to number your episodes. And I'm going, I won't keep them straight. If I don't number them, I won't know where they're at, whatever. So I got to the one that we're 2 ahead on, because I don't want to spoil it yet. And I couldn't find this one that we are literally sitting here to do now. I was freaking out. I came back down here, looked on the machine. I'm like, did I somehow record it on the machine rather than SD card? No. And I'm like, oh yeah, we only did 1 episode. We didn't do 2 last week. That's why this one isn't done. So, that's what happens when you get ahead. But like I said, I wanted to get ahead so that if we had a week where we couldn't do something, we're already ahead. So, no big deal there.
Yeah.
Just kind of made myself paranoid. And then when I came down here, my notes for Nancy were still sitting on the floor, and I'm going, oh my God. And yeah, they're sitting right here. So I'm a dummy. So Connor, did you know that there once was a newspaper in town called The Republican?
Was all the writers only Democrats? Because that would have been funny.
Oh, then we would have to get into that great shift in the political parties. I have seen The Republican down at Legacy of the Plains Museum. I think they have all the issues.
Is it like a Republican newspaper? That's why it's called it, or is it just like an offhand name?
No, it leaned that way.
Okay.
Yeah. And it ran for a while, and today we're going to talk on storytelling. I can't talk today.
Yeah. Storytelling on the plains.
There you go.
We husband down here.
So today we're going to talk about the Republican and its founder, Eugene Theodore Westervelt. And we've done Westervelts before. Remember the first marriage in Scottsbluff?
That's right.
So yes, definitely related. There were a whole bunch of them that were cops. And in this episode that we're going to get to, we're going to come in across another Westervelt that was a cop. But they were all over here. You know, you get one of them to come here, and then you get another and another, and then they get married and have kids, and you get more and more and more. So there's a whole bunch of them.
Oddly enough, we did that with our family. We came down here, then my grandma came down here, and then my great-grandparents came down here.
And I'm on the opposite end. I came out here, and no one else will come out here.
Yeah.
They won't even come out to visit.
That's very sad.
Yeah.
I would think you can come out to at least visit.
Yeah.
I'm like from New York.
I have the room. My nephew complains he hates the cold. I'm like, great.
Come in the summer.
Come in the summer. It's stinking hot.
We have seasons here.
Yeah. And actually it's nice and hot here, but it's not like that heat wave that New York has right now.
It isn't. I know we've had a very, very pleasant June.
Yes.
I think personally.
Yes.
We've had a few hot days. Yesterday got pretty toasty. Mm-hmm. But it was July.
Yeah.
It was the first day of July, so what do you expect?
And because it was so hot yesterday, Paul asked me if I was going to water the trees. And I said, no, it rained yesterday. Do you know how wet they are? And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, I'll do them today. Okay. He's all worried about them dying, and they're fine.
I think they've been doing pretty good.
Yeah.
They look good.
I'm pretty happy with my progress so far, and I've told you many stories before about how I kill plants, so I'm pretty happy that I haven't killed this one. I just wish my grandma's been dead 14 years, but she would be proud of me that I finally didn't kill something. so far.
Mine was violets. That was the first thing I had to learn not to kill. We had a wonderful violet collection when I was back in Sioux Falls. Mm-hmm. And those are so hard to do. And so, like, you can't really mess with them that much. You just kind of have to leave them alone once you put them down. You can't move them much after that. They don't like being moved around, so.
And I don't know why I don't have that green thumb, because my grandma had plants everywhere, and in the winter, the inside of the house was full of plants because you had to bring them in. Mm-hmm. And how did I not learn anything from her? I grew up in her house. She literally raised me, and I got no green thumb. So,
and I think my great grandparents and my whole family had indoor plants growing up. We had the least amount because we had dogs and us kids. But my grandparents definitely did.
Yeah, but that's all right. The trees are doing well. And today we're going to start talking about Eugene. Again, he came up while I was looking for something else and looked interesting, so put him on my list and I did him. So Eugene was born in Greenfield, Franklin County, Massachusetts on January 16th, 1865. His father, James H. Westervelt, was born on January 6th, 1840 in Paterson, New Jersey, and his mother, Lorena Day Westervelt, was born on May 4th, 1848 in Stamford, Connecticut. I don't have to put that stuff in there, I just like to because I found it, and what if it disappears in the future? Now you have another spot where... They passed away in 1908 and 1912, respectively, and Eugene was the oldest of their 5 children. So they didn't have, 900 kids like some of the folks that we come across.
900 kids.
I couldn't do it. I would have been a terrible wife back then. I'd be like, yeah, no, you'll be lucky to get one.
My dad's side of the family came from a big family. They had quite a large family.
My mom is part of 5, although it was 4. And then when she was 16 and my aunt was 14, my other aunt was born. She was a surprise. Mm-hmm. My grandma literally thought something was horribly wrong with her. That was not even in her mind to think that she was going to have another kid. And then my grandma was from 7. And then I think my maternal grandfather, I think he was an only child, but I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we're getting into that time period too where you're starting to get slightly smaller families. Not your 11, 12, 15, but your 5, 7, 9s.
Yeah, by the 1900s, you're getting into better medicine. Your kids are actually living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Eugene's brother James worked as a merchant in Gearing. His other brother Claude was a blacksmith in Scottsbluff, and his sister was referred to in A History of Western Nebraska and His People as Mrs. Parvin Gilbert, and she lived in Scottsbluff as well. I don't like that. I get it. Every time we come across this, I get upset over it, and I need to stop getting upset over it. That you're Mrs. somebody. You don't get to have your first name. That will always aggravate me. It shouldn't, but it does. Anyway, Eugene...
Well, Baptist Church.
Yeah. Eugene was a member of the Baptist Church. His father served 3 years in the 69th New York Infantry in the Civil War. In 1868, his father moved the family to Michigan, where he worked his trade as a general blacksmith. And in 1877, they moved to Nebraska. Eugene's father first homesteaded in Custer County in the town of Westervelt before making their way to Scottsbluff County on a claim. And Eugene's father also belonged to one of the first Masonic lodges established in the area. So the Westervelts founded the town Westerville. There's a whole story there, but it's not in our coverage that we do. So I'm not going to get into the history of it. I mean, basically, the family founded a town and named it after themselves.
Custer County, South Dakota?
No, Westerville, Nebraska. In West. Custer County, Nebraska.
Oh, in Custer County, Nebraska.
Yeah. And from the stories we've done before from folks back in this time period when Scottsbluff's just getting going. The Baptists seem to be the first ones that were out here. And people come out here and they're like, well, I was a Methodist, but there's a Baptist church there, so I'll go there. I think that's just kind of how it grew. They were the first ones to get out here. It's also kind of the idea behind the Montrose Church.
Yeah.
It's a Catholic church, and they still very much try and claim that territory for the Catholics.
Yeah. Well, and the Catholics, they're Catholics and the Baptists are probably out around about the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, if not the Catholics first. I mean, they because trying to talk. I don't know if it's been ever proven that the Spaniards have gotten ever this far north, but the Catholic influence, I think, definitely from the recent once this area once belonged to Spain was a definite influence.
Yeah.
And the missionaries probably already got out here well before the territory was claimed. So
yeah, and there've been several Catholic missions out here. I mean, they were just very proactive in that. So once in Custer County, in addition to attending school, Eugene also worked in the Western Echo newspaper in Westervelt for about a year and a half. And I think, according to the timeline, this was around the time that the family moved to Scottsbluff. So I think that's the only reason why he worked for that newspaper, only for about a year and a half, because the family moved. So got to move with them. So he was already doing some newspaper stuff as a kid, back in kind of central-ish Nebraska. So Eugene marries Laura Bell Amos in 1886, and they have a bunch of kids.
They had a bunch of kids.
So this is the list from Shumway's book, which we reference all the time. It's the history of Western Nebraska and its people. We reference it all the time because it is very influential. It provides a lot of history to this area. And even though Shumway is biased, a lot of people are biased. I mean, I'm biased just in who I pick. There are a very select few people that I would never cover on this podcast. And the fact that I could probably do this till the day I die and no one would ever know is because there are that many stories out here.
Yeah.
And so no one will ever know who those select few are, but I just won't do them. It would be like, this guy killed 67 people and burned a house down with kittens. I'm not going to do a story on him. Never. I just made that up.
Maybe they were really, really evil cats.
No. Although when I was a little kid, it was the only cat that survived. Some jerk had a house full of cats. There were more than 30, and he set the house on fire.
And that's just, that's horrible.
And he went to jail. He got 30-some years, and he was already in his 50s then, so he probably died in prison. But the one cat that managed to escape was my little cat Tigger, and he had little burned paws. And it was hilarious because we had to put cream on him, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't get him to sit still to do it. And I get it. Your pads have been burned. It hurts. And so it was absolutely amazing. My grandma could grab that cat by the scruff of his neck. And I mean, he's a little kitten. He's like 7 months old. Flips him over, puts the lotion on his pads, and then, gives him a little belly rub and plays with him while, the lotion sets in, and waits long enough so that Tigger didn't then lick the lotion off of his hands. And here I am, can barely pick the cat up. I can't get him to stop moving, can't get any lotion on him. She did the same thing pilling a cat. She could pick a cat up, and by the time she flipped him over on his back, the pill was already down his throat, and she's rubbing his throat, make sure it stays down. I'm like, how? And now it's a 2-person job. It takes Paul and I to pill one cat, and we're all cut up when we're done.
Yep.
So whenever our cats get sick and they're like, you need to pill the cat, I'm like,
Well, that's one of the most horrible things about hoarding too much cats. It's not really safe because if the house even if it isn't on purpose, accidentally goes on fire, those poor little animals also become spreading torches. So you have to usually come out with a gun, and they're still very hard to kill. So not only do they suffer, they potentially spread fires to other places, and they have.
Yeah.
So don't hoard cats.
Don't hoard cats, but just be kind. You know.
Be kind. Well, definitely don't set your house on fire.
Yeah.
Don't do that in general.
Yeah.
Arson's not a good idea.
Yeah.
It'll put you in jail for a while.
Regardless of whether you're doing it for the insurance money or whatever, just don't do it.
Don't ever do it for the insurance money.
Because you're the first suspect, you dummy. Oh, God. Anyway, so back to Eugene. Shumway listed all of the kids in order of their ages. So Eugene and Laura Bell had James William, and he was assisted with A.J. Shumway in the abstract business. I don't know what the abstract business was. I'm not.
God.
It's got to be some.
To what?
Yeah.
Like construction.
That's what
art?
I was thinking. It had to have something to do with construction. Otherwise, they would have said he was an artist. And since he's the oldest and he's the first boy, he's probably got a manual job. I highly doubt he was an artist. Muriel N. resided at home. I guess she just wasn't married. Who knows? Because, that's how it went too. You're not married, you got to stay at home. And John McKinley, who they called Kim, I don't know why.
Kim McKinley.
I couldn't find any reason.
Because Kim McKinley sounds really cool.
Okay. There you go, because it sounded cool. He assisted Eugene in the newspaper business and received military training at Camp Dodge from June to August 1918, and then as a member of Battery A, 88th Division, 338th Field Artillery, accompanied the American Expeditionary Forces to France, and then returned home in January 1919. So Kim was in World War I. And I decided to include whatever info I could find out about the kids just because. So Lawrence Eugene, at the time of the writing of Shumway's book in 1921, Lawrence Eugene was still in the service. And he was enlisted in the Naval Reserves, and he spent 4 months at Great Lakes and 3 months at the Minneapolis Naval Training School, and was then assigned to duty on the transport Arizona. Mendel Eli enlisted in 1918 in the Marine Corps. He spent 3 months training at Mare Island and was discharged February 1919 and is now employed on government building works north of Mitchell, Nebraska. So, in case you aren't sensing a pattern yet, everybody's serving. Everybody just has signed up and served, and that was common in World War II.
World War One.
World War One. Thank you. Oh my God.
Well, but that is important to note, though, because during World War One, did they draft?
They did draft, and there wasn't really the big push yet for the consideration of you just sent Mr. Smith's 5 sons to war, and that's how you get the whole movie Saving Private Ryan, because it's like, oh my God, all his brothers were killed. We got to go find Ryan and get him back home before he gets killed too. But in World War I, that just wasn't a thing, and it's not uncommon to read stories of, I had 4 boys and they're all dead. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess I did not come necessarily from a military family. There are definitely people in my family who served, but didn't all serve. There wasn't like a great pattern of it.
Yeah. There was not a pattern in my family either. My maternal grandfather, my mom's brother, and then her other brother didn't serve because he had 2 little boys. So my one uncle served in Vietnam. He got married just before he went, and my cousin is 6 years younger than me. So took care of things before and after he went. But my family in general is not a military family. There's
No. My family is definitely like a service family in a way. Like my mom was a cop, my dad was a paramedic, and my uncle was a state trooper. That was definitely ran.
Yeah.
It's like service to the community, but so military took its spots there. But yeah.
Yeah. And my family is all in one way or another in healthcare. And I always made the joke that I did not go into it because I can't stand any of that stuff. I don't want to be around blood or guts or any of that stuff. However, I was the health reporter at the Star Herald. So still.
I'm too empathetic.
Yeah.
I can't do it. If I poke somebody with a needle, my arm starts to hurt.
Yeah.
I'm like, that bad. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't want to hurt people.
I don't even know if I could poke somebody with a needle.
I have when I have to. Like, I can grip my teeth and
Okay.
bear it, but like not much more than that.
Yeah.
If I need to like cut somebody or cut
Yeah.
something out of somebody, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I can do that.
Like that episode of MASH where I think it was Klinger and Father Mulcahy, they like found this guy and then their Jeep wrecked or whatever. They weren't getting back to the unit and they're like, listen to this guy. And he was like, and they're like, yeah, he's choking. You need to cut a hole. You need to do a trach. Do you have something? And he's like, oh, I got a pocket knife. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. And then, well, you need to make a hole. And he had a ballpoint pen, so he pulled the pen out and had the tube. And they did. And that's what they did till they got him back to the MASH unit and, got some proper surgery. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm just going to be like, I'm sorry, buddy, you're going to die. I can't do that. I don't know. Who knows if I was put in that position, maybe, but
I think if I'm put in a position, I could do it. But yeah.
I'll stand guard. I'll wipe up the blood. I'll let Father Mulcahy do it while I just kind of chill out.
Yeah. I've had emergency situations like that happen where I've had to like step in and help and do that kind of stuff. Hold wounds together. Help hold a broken bone or something together. I've had to do that, and I've sucked it up and done it. But doing it willingly, like every day,
no.
Just putting yourself into it, like no.
No way every day. I don't even like. We rewatched The Thing last night with Kurt Russell. And I think I made it about 10 seconds into the scene where the dog that's not the dog, like, started tearing itself apart. And I'm like, oh, I forgot about this scene. And I left. For like 10 minutes.
Too much.
I'm done. I couldn't deal with it. Anyway, so the Westervelts are very big on service that way. Catherine L. Westervelt Henderson attended school. I couldn't find information about where she attended school. I'm sure it's out there. I didn't really look too hard because I wanted to stick with Eugene. And then Shumway did not list the children who had already passed away, but I was able to find them. They were Ethel, who passed away at, she was listed as 1 year old, but she was really about 13 months old. And Desi was 27 and died in 1916. So it's not just a case of Shumway not listing kids that died near birth, like just a few months old. This one was 13 months old, and then the other one was 27. And he's just not listing them at all. Like they didn't exist at all. And, this kid had 27 years before they died, and he's just like, nope, they don't get to go in my book. Again, that's the bias of the time, and yeah.
If you don't do anything in life, saves on print, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I would put them in just because I would want everything in and let someone else make a decision in the future, Because maybe this Desi who died at 27 maybe had a kid. Yeah. But now that they're dead, they're completely erased from the planet. Whatever.
So maybe no one liked Desi.
So I got a little ahead of myself on the kids and what all they did, mainly because I just couldn't find a good place to weave the kids in other than he got married and they had some kids. He did other things, But sometimes it's hard just to weave those kids in. So anyway, Eugene went to work in farming, but after 8 years, he retired to pursue work as the Scottsbluff County Sheriff. So here we go with all the Westervelts being sheriffs. Because he's not the only one. In our next episode, so I will spoil it this much, our next episode, there is a Westervelt who's a sheriff, who's involved in our story of this other person. So Eugene was elected sheriff in 1896 and served for 4 years when he decided to return to newspapers. On May 4th, 1900, he began printing The Republican. The newspaper was at first a weekly, but due to demand, he increased it to a semi-weekly. And, printing a newspaper is not cheap. It's never been cheap. No. So, he was like, I'm going to give it a go as a weekly. And then it was so popular, and he made enough money that he could do it semi-weekly. I would have to go back and look at all of the issues, which I did not do, to see if it was just, twice weekly, 3 times weekly. I'm not sure. But when the Star-Herald had started, it was always a 6-day-a-week paper. It didn't publish on Mondays. And the only thing I can guess there is you had to have Sundays off to go to church, so there's nobody to print the paper for Monday. They had one special edition on a Monday. I can't remember what it was for. It was something with Vietnam, I think. I don't think it was the sugar factory. Anyway, the paper is now 3 times a week, I think. They went down to 4 a couple years ago, and I think they're down to 3 now. They're going to be a weekly here in the next year or so, and then they're not going to publish paper anymore. They'll be online only. I just don't... I don't see it going any other way, and that's a whole lot of politics for a whole other time that I don't want to get into.
It makes me reminisce, though, because I used to be a paper boy.
Yeah. That's how I started. I delivered newspapers starting at 12 years old.
It'd be kind of sad to think that they're not around anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, there's those whole experiences that even like maybe your generation maybe didn't experience. That noise you hear, folks, is Aaron deciding to take our old chair, and it's her cat scratch post now. But I had to collect every week. And then somewhere in the late 90s, I think it had almost completely shifted to you just sent your payment in.
Yeah,
but I
didn't collect.
Yeah.
Thank goodness, because some of those people were just awful to me. Just the meanest people.
Yeah, I had some very, very mean people, and I had to learn at a very early age, I didn't compromise because you're still going to pay me my money, or I'm not delivering you the paper.
I'll come back with you with some brass knuckles and we'll settle this old man.
But I might let you slide a week. Our policy was 2 weeks. If you didn't pay in 2 weeks, the paper got cut off until you paid. And there were some folks that I let slide. I remember delivering to a lady that had 4 kids, and she was a single mom, so she was struggling to begin with. But like all the kids read the paper. They all loved having the paper. So I let her slide. Because my mom was a single mom too. So one, I knew how hard it was. My mom only had 2 kids. This lady had 4. And all of her kids loved reading the paper. So I'm like, yeah, I'll let it slide, And then sometimes maybe she only had half the money to pay. And, can you wait till payday and I'll get you the other half? Yes, I'll do that. Because she would work with me, I would work with her. But then there was that just awful lady that wouldn't pay till I cut her off, literally. No, I could give her an extra week, an extra 2, 3, 4, 5. She's still not paying, and I'm not going to pay. It's okay, then I'm not going to deliver your paper anymore. And the day that her paper did not arrive, can you come over to my house after school today and I'll pay you? You had the money, you just didn't want to pay me. 7 years. I hated that lady. So
no one's going to be able to experience that ever again.
No. Thank goodness, I guess. Yeah, so if you ever watched the episode of MASH where Klinger started his own newspaper and he's walking around trying to drum up business, he was trying to do the whole thing, though. He was writing the stories. He was trying to get people to write little columns. He was trying to get people to subscribe, and then he was delivering. Yeah, no, I was only one of those tiny cogs. Yeah. And that's why we don't have sponsors, because I can't do marketing. And this is something that's fun for me, and I don't want to be beholden to anybody. For that. I mean, granted, if someone said, hey, we'll give you X dollars if you just advertise us and no strings, I like money.
That's true.
She's mad because we brought every time. So it's been a week since you've been here. That chair has been knocked over 5 or 6 times. I'm just not picking it up anymore. Yeah, because she likes it that way. So, okay, fine. That's your chair now. And as a matter of fact, that chair is from the Star Herald. When I was working there, they were getting new chairs, and they were throwing the old chairs away, and that was a perfectly fine chair. So I put it in the trunk of my car, brought it home. Paul used it for about 10 years. He just got his new chair up there, and he hates it because he's all used to this chair now. But he needed a new chair, so he can just deal with that, the new one. But that's another thing about corporate life that I think is stupid, is you buy something and you're like, okay, in X years we have to buy new ones of these. Well, if the chair works, why do you have to get rid of it? And I mean, yes, it's covered in cat hair now, but it was fine. It wasn't dirty. It wasn't grimy. It was still in good condition, and it had only been at the Star Herald for 3 years.
It's something they probably see as, oh, we're doing this for our employees, making sure that they're, are comfortable, even though if we're going to treat them like shit, we should make sure they're comfortable.
Yeah. Just pay me more. Yeah, I'll buy my own chair if you pay me enough money for work.
So, a lot of the cubicle jobs that I've found, that's what you do. They'll give you a standard chair, but they'll be like, we'll throw this in the closet. You can get your own chair, whatever chair you want. And that they're usually perfectly
give you a
fine
stipend
with that.
for what you can buy. Yeah. Our friend Mikhail, he just started a job with 21st Century Equipment, and they gave him a stipend of, you need boots. What was it? He was like, the boots are hard. The fronts of them are hard. I'm like, oh, you're getting steel toe boots, because he just didn't know the term. But they have many options. They said, here is X dollars for your boots, and you can get a pair at that price. But if you want anything above that, you have to pay the difference. And then they also provide the shirts. So when you see folks that work at 21st Century and they're walking around with their T-shirts, polo shirts, that stuff, they get a stipend.
They stop by quite a bit.
Yeah. And he was all happy about that. I'm like, dude, there are not many companies that do that anymore. So they're it's awesome. Anyway, so back to Eugene. I don't know if Eugene did those kind of things. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Maybe he just borrowed a chair from someplace else and used that. So according to A History of Western Nebraska and Its People, Eugene was successful in the newspaper business. The paper has a wide distribution with an actual subscription list of 1,800. I can tell you that when I left the Star Herald in 2019, the circulation had dropped down to like 3,600 in the Panhandle. But 1,800 at this point in time is really good circulation, because there aren't even... it's competing. It's competing with a couple of other local papers, but this is it in Scottsbluff. Eventually, it's fighting with the Star Herald. But
so, what was the Star Herald at its peak, as far as like sales or subscribers?
Subscribers, I'm not sure. I know when I started in 2013, they were close to 40,000, and then 6 years later, they were down to like 3,500. And some of it has to do with during the first Trump administration, they put tariffs on Canadian paper, which is where the vast majority of newspapers in the country got their newspaper print from Canada. And now you quadrupled their prices because, yes, it was cheaper to buy U.S. paper, but you were still quadrupling the prices doing that. Mm-hmm. So they have to raise the prices, and then they're cutting back staff. And I personally think Lee Enterprises, all they care about is money. They don't care about your newspaper, what it looks like. You pick up any newspaper in the state, because Lee owns like 95% of the newspapers in Nebraska. They all look like each other now. You go onto their websites, they're all almost identical. They're just cookie cutter crap. And I saw that happen in 2001, 2002. So basically all the baseball teams used to have their own websites as well. And then Major League Baseball was like, no, you have to bring it all under our house. And then everybody's website looks the same. I'm not a big Yankee fan. I grew up a New York Mets fan. But the New York Yankees website, circa like 1998, 99, it was phenomenal. It was such a fantastic website, and I would use that as an example of what you want to do for a website.
Excuse me.
Bless you. And then they decided that, nope, we all got to come in-house and we all got to look the same. And that's essentially what's happened with Lee Enterprises. And they don't have the staff anymore because they've cut the staff back so bad. But they don't have the local stories anymore. If you pick up the Star-Herald, the top of the fold is almost always a state or national story, and people want their local paper. And they just don't do that anymore, so people quit buying it, so now it costs more, and then people quit buying it, so it costs more, and you're just waiting out the inevitability of it not printing anymore, which sucks because newspapers are awesome, or they used to be. And I do support some. I won't get into who I do and don't support, but there are some news organizations that I do support because I think they do really good work.
I got into a bunch in Minneapolis and Denver. Especially like Denver, they have a lot of private little stuff that they do that's kind of fun.
Yeah. And those kind of things is great. And you look at Inspire. I worked for Inspire for a year, and it was just too much work for me. But they do
decent.
Yeah, they do profiles on people around the Panhandle, and everybody loves that. And they wanted more of that from the Star-Herald, and they got less. I don't even think they do anymore. I think the only profile they do anymore is their Citizen of the Year that they do on January 1st. Other than that, they don't do those kind of stories at all anymore. There
was a little operation out in Mitchell, wasn't there? A little private operation that does papers because the reporter was coming around to all sorts of things and doing stuff. But
yeah. I think they're still up there, but it's still just only distributed in Mitchell. It's not even coming down here, and we're only 10 minutes away.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's very, very local.
Yes, yeah.
Which is, again, it's kind of quaint.
Yes.
It's like your town leaflets, maybe. I don't
know. I think we're kind of going back to the beginning, that you're just picking up at the beginning. It's kind of what we do. I mean, if you think about it, when I worked at the Star-Herald, I could do these stories, and it would go in the lifestyle page on Sundays. But we don't do those stories anymore. And the last editor that I had, literally all I would be able to do on Eugene Westervelt is he moved out here. He started the newspaper. The newspaper ran date X to date X, and he died on date X. And that's it. Like 3 sentences. And we're just doing a whole podcast. And even just writing it here, it was 3 typed pages. I know it says 5, but, I blew it up so I can read it. Oh. It's easier when you leave it at 12-point font and you try to read. For the podcast, it's a little harder, so I bump it up to 18. But, this was, I think this was around 1,300 words. Nice little story about a dude that used to live here. It's part of the history of the town. But they would never let you do anything like that at the Star-Herald now. It would have to be something huge.
Yeah. And it has to be like headline news kind of stuff, breaking news.
Yeah.
Otherwise, talk about schools.
Like if somebody's last name was Westervelt and they set the Star-Herald building on fire, then Eugene might be named, he's the great-great-grandson of Eugene Westervelt, who's, ran the Republican here many years ago, and that's all you would even get then.
That's all.
So anyway, 1,800 was a very good distribution at the time. Additionally, Mr. Westervelt operates a large job printing office. The political complexion of the Republican is as its name indicates. Mr. Westervelt has long been acceptable in all party councils. He served many years as County Central Committeeman and at present is State Central Committeeman. During the administration of President Taft, he was postmaster of Scotts Bluff. So for those of you that don't know, Taft was president from 1909 to 1913. So he was well liked. They just mentioned that the paper was Republican and he was Republican, but he belonged to a bunch of different committees and it didn't matter. And what
was a Republican in 1909 that we could recognize as a Republican today? Because from my understanding, they were completely different.
They were completely different, and they don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
He would probably be classified, I don't even think center-right. I think he'd, at the very least, center. In the U.S., maybe center-left, leaning a little bit left, but more center. Because technically, I'm a massive lefty, but if you put me on the world stage, I hit center right.
Yeah.
So it depends where you're going and the time period. But if you dropped him here today, I don't think he would be a Republican. Maybe he'd be nonpartisan today, because I don't know if you could classify him either of the two major parties. And he was well liked. But that, I still see that today. I see folks in your Kiwanis, your Lions Club, your Rotary.
Yeah.
Yes, people are going to be more conservative because we live in a conservative area, but they don't go, ooh, you can't join because you don't think like we do. They're just like, oh, you want to help? Yeah, come on, join. Pick up a shovel.
It's very true, especially with Kiwanis.
Yes. And Kiwanis, I couldn't keep up with the Kiwanis.
I couldn't either.
Yeah.
Jason and I tried to do Kiwanis up in Sioux Falls, and man, they are just, they really go at it.
Yes.
It's like, oh crap, nope, sorry.
Yes, and even here, so Inspire Today, one of the co-owners, Jeff Fielder, is a member of Kiwanis, and I can't even count the number of things he does with them. And the press releases we would get, Kiwanis's, pancake feed. They do pancake feeds a lot. Mm-hmm. But they're all over the place, and they start them pancake feeds at 5 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. No, I'm not. Let me give you a donation. I'm good.
I'll buy a pancake?
Yes. Yes. So it just seems like he would have fit in that sense today.
Yeah.
Just not an issue with...
a good old boy.
Yeah.
But not necessarily political.
Yeah. So again, Shumway had some tactful praise for Eugene, and he tends to have mostly positive views of folks that he wrote about. Founder, editor, and proprietor of The Republican at Scotts Bluff, has been a molder of public opinion and vigorous, constructive citizen for many years. Today, the Brits would say he's a good bloke. He has served effectively in numerous public capacities. In the close confidence of the Republican Party, he has been an influential disseminator of its principles, but his loyalty and patriotism have not been bound by party ties at any time in his career. So he seems to be like a dude that is like, yeah, okay, I'm a Republican, but I want to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's not the Republican thing, then I'll do this other thing. And he just seems like, like most of the folks that I acquaint myself with. They just want to do the right thing, and left, right, center doesn't matter. They just want to be a good person. And I think it was a lot easier to do back then, even though the town was smaller and everybody kind of was all up in your business because the town was smaller.
But you had to stick together.
Yeah.
If you needed something done rather quickly and
yes.
you couldn't wait, you kind of depend on the help of your neighbors.
Yes. And that was a nice thing being in the newspaper business as well. I could sit at my desk and I would say, I need to write a story, on topic X. Who do I call? And 15 people would shout out somebody's name. And more often than not, it was the same name. So I'm like, okay, that's the person I need to call. So you still kind of have that mentality today. Mm-hmm. And even so my boss made me go through this program called Leadership Scottsbluff, and you have to give up a Wednesday every month. Yes, every month, one Wednesday a month, and you basically go around, you learn about the town, learn how everything functions and works, and it's basically this giant networking thing. And I already knew a lot of it by the time I went through the program, but I had to go through it anyway. But it made it easier that next time that I needed the call about X. Okay, well, I know this person works at the bank, and I got this bank story I got to do. So I would call her. Who do I talk to at your bank about this story? Oh, this dude. And then I would call that dude, and I would get the story. So it's still that kind of sticking together. It's not that we're going to starve to death, or, if your horse died, you need to, get on well with your neighbors so you can borrow their horse so you can get stuff done. Mm-hmm. But it is still that in the same sense.
It's that way where you can, if you don't do that, it definitely makes your time here a little bit harder.
Yes.
And there's plenty of people who do get along just fine being hermits of the town. But it does... Yeah, the more people it makes things a lot easier.
Yes. And I think about when Paul and I lived in Lincoln. There's absolutely nothing wrong with Lincoln. It was a great town. We lived there when there were about 150,000 people, I think, in town. Mm-hmm. I think there's like 250 in Lincoln now. And we didn't really know anybody. We lived there for almost 3 years, didn't know anybody. I have a friend that moved back there 3 years ago, and she said she really doesn't have any friends. And I'm like, dude, as soon as I can save some money, I'll come and I'll visit you. But there were people, we had the oddity that here's the New Yorker married to the Brit. Why are you guys in, Nebraska and Western Nebraska on top of that? So we had that, but we were able to make some connections. Mm-hmm. And the ones that tried to make connections with us weren't always the ones we wanted to connect with. But you weave that through and you learn it, and it's a lot easier in a smaller town than a big old town. And there's nothing wrong with big towns. Some people absolutely love that. But I don't mind big towns. I can go to New York City and chill out for a day or two or three, but I can't live there. And I have learned over time that it was because of the PTSD. And so this nice, quiet prairie does well for me. Mm-hmm. And people are pretty good to us. My neighbor every Tuesday, she beats me to the garbage can and she brings it back up to my garage before I get it back there. And that's just kind of the things you do. So anyway, during the World War, Eugene bravely stood by his beliefs and parted with 3 stalwart sons to fight in another land for human liberty. Mr. Westervelt is the pioneer builder of Scotts Bluff in the sense that he erected the first permanent home here in April 1900 at the corner of 16th Street and 2nd Avenue, where his present fine residence now stands. So I got a little ahead of you there on the kids and them serving, but all of his kids went to war, and thankfully they all came back, because that was not a common thing. You're going to lose at least one of them, and they all came back. So the Scottsbluff Republican served the Scottsbluff and surrounding communities from 1900 to 1964. It was the first newspaper in Scottsbluff and occupied one of the earliest constructed buildings in town. In the waning years, it returned to publishing weekly. So just like the Star-Herald, I think the Star-Herald is in its waning paper publishing years. And it was always a 6-day paper, but we're down to 3 days now. And so he found the same thing coming up in the 60s. The Republican is competing with not just the Scottsbluff Star-Herald, but you had the Mitchell Index, the Gearing Courier, the Minutair. I
forgot what the Minutair one's called.
Yeah, and it's in our next episode. This is what most people would be like, oh, I'm getting old. I literally know this is a trauma response happening right now that I can't remember the Minutair paper name, but that's okay. There was paper in Minutair.
It wasn't Gazzetti, I don't think.
No. And I could cheat since I have it on the floor, but anyway, there was paper in Minutair. So it's not just competing. Yes, you want to read the Scottsbluff paper if you live in Scottsbluff, but you also want your paper to go to Gearing, to go to Mitchell and stuff. And so you're competing with that, and eventually it was too much. Its main competitor throughout that time was the Star-Herald, and the Star-Herald's limping along in 2025. I would love to be able to see it go back, but I think basically you would have to start up a new paper. And it's not coming back, folks, because they've already pulled the printer out of the back of the building. It's not back there anymore.
Yeah.
So it's not coming back.
Well, I mean, we've become more conscious about, starting to recycle, especially paper and stuff. And I get the waste part of it, but I'll also my whole thing about getting this to the tech world or to your phone is it just doesn't become interesting anymore, because I have like 25 news sources that I do. And this just kind of gets piled onto it, and it's just not as nice as when it's like right in front of your hands and it's like tangible.
I still very much prefer reading by hand, and then audiobooks is next. Ebooks, I just haven't been able to make that shift, but I also get that, like you said, I'm just trying to think something popular that's in the news without getting to politics. That's 4th of July is in 2 days. Everything that happened on the 4th of July, we will know about by the time we go to bed. And when you get up on the 5th, who wants to read the paper because it's already been covered? If you're going to have a profitable paper, you have to have stuff that's in it that nobody else has. And that's just going away because they don't pay for reporters to do local stuff anymore. So I have a RSS program, and that stands for Really Simple Syndication. Anybody ever wants me to teach you how to use it, it's very, very easy. But basically, I get my news feeds from the different news sources, and then I can look at the headlines and read it right in the program as it comes in. And as it is, I see the same story more than once from different news organizations. And if you read the Formula One subreddit via RSS, I will see the same story the exact same story from the exact same source posted like 5-6 times. It gets frustrating sometimes because everybody's trying to jump the gun, and they'll delete all of the posts except for the one that went up first. But I see my news ranging from Formula One to politics and everything in between long before a paper can get me. And back in 1900, you're not hearing most of that news unless it's in the newspaper.
Yeah.
So in that sense, Mr. Westervelt here wielded phenomenal power because he got to choose what went in the paper and what didn't. Mm-hmm. And a good newspaper person will, that's news. I think that's stupid and who cares, but it's news. It's going in because people want to read it. So...
and then by the time the Republicans started seeing its downfall, by then you had the great radio fight versus a newspaper.
Yep, and 64, when it finally closed, you're already well into TV news, too.
Yep.
So, he's not just competing with the Star Herald in town. He's competing with radio and TV.
Just like the Star Herald now is competing with technology, the modern times.
Yep, and in my opinion, they took too long to get onto the modern bandwagon because you have papers that are still competing and are still doing well, and you look back and they're the ones that jumped on the technology early and decided to invest in it when it still cost a bit of money. And in my opinion, I know you used to have to pay a lot more for bandwidth and server width and, the amount of people coming to your website and stuff. But I have had a website and paid for a website since 1997. If I can find a way to do it.
You would think they could.
You would think they could. Yes, they're going to have to scale up and find some, economics to make it work, but they should have been able to do it.
Because you're right. Because like the technology, I just saw one that was really cool that they might bring back the CD. Mm-hmm. But the CD measures in terabytes, like several terabytes of data. It's almost enough to put a whole computer's worth of data onto that one little disk. It's an incredible amount of terabytes, and so it was kind of cool to see that kind of stuff. So that's all I have to do. Yeah,
because even I dabbled in piracy. We won't get into that, but I had a copy of Windows XP and it was on 2 CDs. It didn't fit on one because the CD was 4.7 gigabytes of data. And now you'd be looking at several, unless you got one of those nice, bigger CDs, which they'll do. My husband was remarking the other day, he didn't even know. Oh, God, he's so tech illiterate. But, he's got a micro SD card in his phone, and he was watching because we're switching over to a different phone company. And when I pulled the little card slot out, I had my micro SD card and the SIM card. And he's like, they're just so small today. He's like, what? And I go, yeah, mine's 128 gigs. And he's like, how is that 128 gigs? I'm like, dude, I got some that are 512. What? And I go, yeah, I was, because I was actually thinking of putting it in his phone, the bigger one, because he never takes his pictures off his phone, even though he can transfer them off with 3 clicks of the button. He doesn't. And I don't want him to lose photos, so I was thinking of getting a bigger card. And he's like, how is that much stuff on there? I'm like, yeah, and look how tiny it is. So you got to be careful not to lose it. And if you think about it, that little tiny, it reminds me a lot of the little stickers of ecstasy I used to see in college. They're very, very small, small and powerful. But they have way more than consumer grade CD has, because they're still 4.7 gigs. And that little tiny card has way more. So if you're going to bring back CDs, you got to make it worth my while now. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and they have. Yeah. If it's true.
It probably is true. It's probably just not low enough in price for people like you or me to consider it yet.
Well, and you have to bring back certain technology to like to read the disc and stuff that's been obsoleted out already. So
Yeah,
that might not be a thing. It might be something that's just installed into computers.
Yeah.
Like a hard drive, basically.
Yeah. Who knows?
I don't know.
We'll just have to keep an eye on that. So, according to Wikipedia, silent film star Jacqueline Logan briefly worked as a journalist at the Republican. So, I don't know much about.
Do you
I don't know
who
much.
that is, Jacqueline Logan?
I know, and I had a hard time. I was like, "Ooh, I could do a story on her if she lived here in Scottsbluff." Yeah, can't. I'm gonna keep trying, but as of right now, I don't really know much. Who knows? Maybe she just was here for like 3 months, needed a job. I don't know.
The star was in quotations.
Yeah.
Silent film star.
So with cost being an issue, the paper closed its own print shop in 1945 and was printed over in Minutair by the Minutair Free Press. That's what the Minutair Free Press became after the Sentinel. It was the Minutair Sentinel. And then we'll do that episode next week about the person who owned it. And the Sentinel eventually got sold to the Minutair Free Press. And it's funny because if you actually look at the newspaper masthead, it's in giant letters, Minutair Free Press, and then little tiny letters, and Sentinel. And they kept that for a while before they just stuck with the Minutair Free Press. So he couldn't afford to do the printing stuff anymore. He did it over in Minutair. He got a better deal. And that's what everybody does. Every paper that's printed now, they're going somewhere for a better deal. The Star Herald isn't printed here anymore. I'm not sure. I think it's in Rapid City, but I'm not sure. Because if you just print them all in the same place, cost-wise, it's way cheaper. And then they just drive them back down here. And it's actually pretty common because when I worked at the Star Herald, we had drawers. And when Bart was the editor, one of my jobs was to grab those every week. He looked at them, and then he dumped them on my desk, and then I looked at them, and then I had to put them away in the filing cabinet. So at the time, we were printing all of the local papers in the Panhandle at the Star Herald. They've all had to since go someplace else, which is why I don't understand why they closed that part of the paper down, because I saw the books one time. They were making bank printing paper back there. I don't know why it got shut down, but they all had to go someplace else. So Eugene stayed on as editor after he went and closed the print shop, and I presume he was just as free to take care of the news as he was before. He was still the editor, so he's calling the shots. So during this time, Eugene belonged to several fraternal groups and remained a Baptist. Laura, his wife, was a member of the Methodist Episcopal Church. He was also a Mason, a Woodman, a Knight of Pythia, and served as the first Chancellor Commander of Hannibal Lodge No. 40 in Scottsbluff. So, I want to know, did they go to different churches every week? He remained a Baptist.
I always wondered how. I mean, my grandpa was a Rotarian, but I always wondered how those lodge people did that.
Yeah,
like you get to that age where that's just like that's your life.
Yeah,
today I'm part of the Knights of Pythia. Tomorrow I'm a woodsman and I'm a mason.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go into the lodge.
Yep.
Have a drink, schmooze, smoke a cigar.
And I actually know, I actually know a lady today. She's a member of the Lions Club. She's a member of the United Way. I think she's still on the board of Leadership Scottsbluff. And is it Kiwanis? Kiwanis or Rotary? One of the other two. So she's in like 4 or 5 different service clubs in town too. So people are still doing that today.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean.
But yeah, you put your little, woodman hat on. We meet on Wednesdays.
It's like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts for adults.
Yeah, pretty much. Because, it's not acceptable to go drinking with the boys, but
Speaking of not acceptable, it's called the Scouts now.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That's a whole story we are never touching. But, yeah, if you go to the Woodman Lodge and you hang out and you drink with your buddies, that's okay because you're doing Woodman things.
Because
you're not just hanging out at the bar with your friends.
And I remember going into these clubs as a kid, like the Elks Club and those places. And the bar was just magnificent. That's usually like the first thing you saw was the bar.
Look, she's all sitting there. She's so
gonna
cute
be nice.
now. We're almost done here, girlie. So Eugene died on March 24th, 1950, age 85. He's buried in Fairview Cemetery in Scotts Bluff. Interesting, Laura died on March 2nd, 1950, age 82, just 22 days before Eugene. And, you always wonder, was it the whole, I don't want to live without you, broken heart thing, or was it just his time? I don't know. But they died 22 days apart. When Eugene died, his son Kim became editor. In late 1964, circulation at the Republican and the Minnetonka Free Press was dangerously low. Neither paper could turn a profit, and publication of both newspapers ceased. The final issue of the Scottsbluff Republican was dated November 19, 1964. So at least for Minnetonka, I know that the Star-Herald tried to pick up, some stories from there. And I know they were successful for a while, but by the time I came around in 2013, it's really hard. I had ended up with 13 beats when I left, and it's hard to cover the entire Panhandle, even with just one beat, just with the health beat. Imagine how many towns there are, and you're trying to cover everything. It's hard. I know for a while they had a reporter in different towns in the Panhandle, but that was no longer a thing by the time I started. But I would imagine when the Minnetonka Free Press closed up, it was easier to absorb it because I imagine that what the Republican was covering in Scotts Bluff, the Star-Herald could easily pick up because they probably were there already anyway. It was just, hey, can we go and pick up some things in Minnetonka? And so one fun note that I found while I was looking for some more information on the Republican, the dugout, which is indoor batting cages here in Scotts Bluff, the dugout noted on their Facebook page on September 16, 2024, some history of the Republican, and I quote from their Facebook post. The East Unit was the location of Scottsbluff's first newspaper, The Republican, back in the early days of the building. When tearing up some flooring, we discovered a trench that was filled with empty liquor bottles and items from the newspaper, including lead print stamps and old newspaper ink bottles. So cool. The one paper we found was dated February 1934. They also kept one of the original lights to preserve some of the history and a connection to the past there. So that was from their September 16th, 2024 Facebook post, and they took pictures, so you can go and look at some of the pictures there on their Facebook page. But that's just another story from here of... Here's a dude that just came out here, and he loved working for the paper before he moved here. And he just decided, right, I'm going to start a paper. I'm going to do a paper. And then, I don't want to put judgments on him, but, it seems like he raised his kids right. They when the time came, they didn't try and not go to war. They went to war, and when Eugene died, his son took over the paper and did the best that he could, but it is extremely difficult to run a newspaper, especially if you look at the Scottsbluff area to have more than one. I know there was the Gearing Citizen and the Gearing Courier for a while. The Gearing Citizen couldn't compete mainly because the Courier ultimately was owned by BH Media, so there's more money behind it, and it can cushion the small losses. But when you're, it was just a family that owned the Gearing Citizen, and their ties go back to Gearing, Mr. Gearing, who founded the town. And, you know, they could only bleed losses for so long before it just wasn't worth it anymore. No matter how much they wanted to do it, they just couldn't. And it's a shame that everybody, there was some bitterness, and I'm not going to get into that, but you get rivalries. You have two newspapers in Gearing, a town of 7,000 people. You're going to have rivalries, and there's some bitterness, and it's a shame that you just couldn't, you know, fold everybody together and make a better paper. But it's not how humans work. That's not how businesses work.
How journalists work.
Yeah. But like, I always got along with the TV station and with the radio station because they're not doing the same story I'm doing. You know, they literally have to sum. We just spent an hour at this place, and they have to sum it up in a 30-second bite, a minute bite, 2 minutes at the max. Now you go type and figure out how many words you can write to talk for 2 minutes. It's not a lot. I could write as long a story as I wanted for the most part. So it was easy for me to get along with them. But there was, even within the Star Herald, there were reporters that wanted to cover things that I was like, yeah, no, I already said I was doing it. And you get competitive that way. But I'm thankful, you know, Gene Westervelt came out here. And yeah, he was a sheriff for a little while, but then he went back into the newspaper business, and we have a whole bit of history of this area thanks to him. That's it for this time. Next time we're going to talk about murder. So come back next week. Connor's going to have too much fun with this.
Talk about murder.
For now, I'm Irene.
And I'm Connor.
And this is Storytelling on the Plains.